Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be talking about how to write contained screenplays. This, by the way, is going to be something that's going to be really important once we're back into full production, once things are going. There's going to be a lot of producers looking for contained screenplays. So if you don't have any of these yet, I would say one of the things you want to do is make it a priority. Now, here's what we're going to do today. Specifically, we are going to first talk about the value of contained projects. Then we'll take a look at some of the most important rules. We'll go into the key parts of great contained movies. And I think there'll be things in this, even if you've written 10 other scripts. If you haven't written a contained screenplay, I promise you, you will learn something valuable here. And then we'll talk about the upcoming class, the ultimate contained movie, for those of you who really do want to take advantage of this kind of its subgenre. So, because it's like having a contained movie is one of those things. You're in the midst of pitching one of your other scripts and the producer says, so what else do you have? And right now, all you have to say is, I have a contained movie. And they'll say, okay, great, tell me about it. Right? And it's like, it's not just a genre or that kind of thing. It actually goes to, I have something that is incredibly easy for you to produce and could be low budget also. But let's talk about that so you can see. A lot of times when people think contained movie, they automatically think low budget. And there are a lot of low budget contained movies. I'd say the majority of them are that, right? But there's some others, and I want to walk you through some of the contained movies that have been successful so you can see, kind of the breadth of this particular way of writing. Friday the 13th. I know Sean Cunningham, the producer of Friday the 13th. This movie came from him. He was brainstorming titles for another movie that he was wanting to do. And in the midst of it, this title popped out of his mouth, Friday the 13th. He didn't think it fit for the project he was working with, but he kept thinking, somebody should do a movie with a title Friday the 13th. Maybe it's me. And then it came to him, right? So he started with that. Budget $550,000. It ended up making $39 million, back, I don't know how many decades ago. And it started really pretty much a craze when it came to horror movies. It kind of restarted the horror movie genre at that point. Alien. I interviewed Ronnie Shusett, who was one of the writers of Alien, along with Dan O'Bannon. And this one started with, he was sleeping on Dan O'Bannon's couch because he didn't have a job, couldn't afford anything, and came up with this idea. And Dan came up with part of it. He came up with the other part of it. They put their two parts together and they had something. The budget was $11 million. Now, they had kind of a couple of semi-stars in there at that time. So that would make sense on that. My guess is if they had done this without the stars, probably they could have done it for, $5 to $6 million, something like that. But the box office on it was $106 million. So notice this one, we're at about, 20 times the budget. Here we're almost at 10 times the budget. 10 Cloverfield Lane. And this one, you may not have seen this one. It was essentially kind of started as a sequel to Cloverfield. And then they decided to make it something that was fairly low budget and shoot it as a contained movie. It has basically, it's three people down in a bunker hiding from what they think is the end of the world. And it's worth watching. It does a great job of a whole bunch of the things we're going to talk about today. But it made 110 million, again, about 9 times its money. A Quiet Place, 17 million. This came from 2 writers basically nobody heard of, nobody knew. And they came up with a great idea. It really was a great idea as a high concept. They got it to a whole bunch of different producers, all of whom said no. You know, and none at that time, nobody was looking for contained movies like they are now. But ultimately they then got it to John Krasinski, the actor, who had his wife read it, and she wanted to be in it, and he wanted to be in it, and that made it happen. They made back 20 times their budget. Pretty amazing. Knives Out. This is a movie that I think a lot of people would say, that's not a contained movie. But if you watch it and you really think about it, 85% of the scenes are in one location. Now you can say, yes, there's the library and there's the office and there's the living room and all that kind of thing, right? But it's from a production perspective, you are bringing equipment to one location. And you're not having to drive the trucks every day going from location to location. Yes, you are having to run some lights up the stairs and those kinds of things, but that's not the same as having to repack the truck, then unload it at the next location, and then pack it again that night and take it to another location, right? It's like basically what this movie came down to when I analyzed it was it could have been done with maybe 3 locations. They actually used 8, but some of them were very like 1 or 2 scenes. It could have been done with 3 locations with 90% of the movie shot in this single location. So it qualifies as a contained movie. Budget was 40 million. They had some stars. The box office, 312 million. So again, it's somewhere in the 8 to 9 times its money. Gravity. This one, when it first happened, it was unbelievable to me. Wow, you're doing a contained movie for $100 million. But they did. And it made back 748 million. That's incredible. Now, if you haven't seen Gravity, absolutely watch it. There's some amazing things that they did in that movie in order to make sure that it stayed contained. And if you get down to it, Gravity basically had 3 different spaceships. It was outer space, 3 different spaceships, and then one scene where we got to land on the beach at the very end. And that was it, right? Pretty amazing. 2 stars, 1 actor that said maybe 2 lines or 3 lines. Other than that, the entire thing, start to finish, was focused on these 2 stars, Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. And that was a big part of why it was $100 million. So, and then finally, Passenger. This one's actually interesting. You probably haven't seen it. It had, I think it was Chris Pine and Jennifer Lawrence in it. Budget was 110 million. Basically, the whole pitch on this one was, a spaceship is on the way to someplace. Everybody's in hypersleep. One guy wakes up and he gets lonely, so he goes and finds the most attractive female there and wakes her up 100 years before they're supposed to arrive. And they have their romance. Then she finds out, and then she hates him. But it was actually interesting. It was interesting to watch, and but again, basically it had 3 characters. It had 2 humans and a robot, which was a voiceover by another actor. And it was simple. It was something that you've got a simple story that is done incredibly well. So these give you an idea of at least some of the contained movies. Now, there's been a lot of contained movies that have been done. Some of them have a single character. Some of them are up to 4 or 5 characters and 2 or 3 locations and those kinds of things. But what you can see is if the writing is great and if you make the right decisions, you could have something that could absolutely turn into success. And especially in the environment that we're going to be in here very soon, this is worth mastering. So let's talk about how you do it. The value of a contained script. First, it is easier to produce. And this is important. When you have very few actors, when you have very few locations, when you have something that is much easier to get funding for because it's low budget and that kind of thing, that's easier to produce, right? So you can go into production very, very fast. You can get funding for it at a faster level. All you need to do is just get a couple of actors that are known and you're in business. And that brings us to this. It's easier to cast. And the one thing you want to make sure of when you're doing this is that you cast it with, a couple of actors who like each other and who want to work together, right? And this gives them the opportunity to do that. But it's easier to cast for a bunch of reasons. One is you're going to have a shorter production period, right? Because it's contained like this, you'll be able to shoot it instead of 30 days, you might be able to shoot it in 10 or 15 days. Second, again, because you only have a few people to cast, you're not going to have to do 1/10 as many auditions. And very likely you'll be able to just go out to those particular actors, as in the producer will, present the script. If it's a great script and there's someone they want to work with, there's a very good chance it'll get cast very quickly. Third, it's low budget, inherently low budget, and you can make it higher budget, right? So it's not that you can't get to the higher budget. It's just you need bigger stars to get to the higher budget, usually. So, and lots of producers want contained scripts. This has been the case ever since the pandemic. During the pandemic, this actually. There were producers who the only reason that they were still in business was because they shot contained scripts during the pandemic. Since then, this has become the thing producers now look at in a completely different light than they did before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, it was like, well, I don't know if I want to shoot a contained movie. If I'm going to shoot one, I may as well do something at 30 million instead of 3 million. And it's like, I got it. After the pandemic, they were like, oh yeah, contained movies, absolutely. Yeah, we're very interested, right? Because now they know the value of them. Now they know how easy they are to get made. They also now know that you can do contained movies and not have people going, wow, that just felt really kind of crammed in, right? It's like, again, when you look at Alien, or you look at Passengers, or let's see, Knives Out, or any of those, what you're seeing is something that feels big, that feels like something big is going on. It doesn't feel small because it was written to feel big. So I think that's a really valuable thing to have available. And it just depends upon your ability to write. So I believe every writer should have a contained screenplay. And I started saying this again back in the pandemic. Once it became clear that producers were attracted to contained screenplays, that's when I started saying, I think every writer should have a contained screenplay. Once the market started pointing to, we need contained screenplays, and that, again, that was happening in the pandemic, but it's also coming up for us. The market, once again, is going to be like, yes, let's get as many projects as possible pumped out and into the streamers. And that's going to become really, really important at that time. So again, every writer should have a contained screenplay. If you don't have one yet, that should become your mission today. So, most important rules for contained movies. First one, do more with less. Now listen, if you have a script where 3 people are trapped in a cave, let's say, and they're going to be in there for almost the entire movie, you need to find lots and lots of ways to do more with less. And most people, a lot of people would look at it and say, well, it's just, there's nothing going on. They're in a coal mine. There's nothing around them, all these kinds of things. You know what? You're the creator. You can generate all kinds of solutions. You can put things in there that they'll discover. You can have, other mine shafts they didn't know about, and they'll go down those, and suddenly there's something there. You can design more fear into it. You can also design deep relationships into it. There's so many things that you can do in a situation where you have less. It just means you're creative in a different way. So first, less locations, but they perform double duty. Right? Let's go back to our coal mine. I'm just making things up as we're going, but let's go back to our coal mine and let's pretend for a moment that we're going to have a total of 3 locations. We're going to have the place where they got trapped in the coal mine. We're going to have the people outside of the coal mine who are trying to communicate with them, trying to dig their way in, and those kinds of things. And then we're going to have this other mine shaft they discover. Okay, so you've got those 3. Now then your question is, how do they perform double duty? And you could do it a whole bunch of ways, but let's just say in the midst of trying to dig into the next mine shaft, they discover one of their friends that's dead. And now we just went from, hey, we're just here to save ourselves, to, they're going to start mourning. They're going to start going through the emotional stuff that goes with that, right? So with just one change, suddenly we took the emotion into a completely different direction, and we probably made it, 3 times as compelling to an audience, 3 times as deeply emotionally engaging for that audience. Right? So it's important to be able to think and create in that way. You need characters with layers. And here's what I would say, and I'll probably talk about this later on, but I would say, listen, there needs to be way more under the surface than on the surface. So if you're writing like some big, huge movie, and you've got like big action happening and fight scenes splashed and chase scenes splashed on the screen, right? It's like you can get away with all kinds of stuff because you've got us so visually engaged. But here, you need to give us, again, characters with layers, and you need to give us more beneath the surface than on the surface. That's a different style of writing. And by the way, a lot of times when people say, oh, I wouldn't write a contained movie, it's like not that artistic. Please, anybody that says that doesn't know anything about contained movies. Just know that, because you are going to have to be more creative to discover the kind of layers that fit. You're going to have to be more creative to be able to write beneath the surface. You're going to have to be more creative to have your locations and your props and everything else perform double duty. Now, by the way, once you master this stuff, it will translate into your bigger scripts. So let's say you're writing stuff that's in the 15 to 30 million range, and you write some low budget, $1 to $3 million single location movie where you do all the things I'm going to recommend here. You will become a significantly better writer, because you are having to create in a much more kind of constrained way that requires much more thinking, much more out of the box, right? So if you're having to step outside the box, if you're having to look at life in a different way and to create in a different way, you're going to get more creative. Plus, we're going to give you so many tools for this. So rule number 2, engage us in every moment. So this is the other part. You know, again, in this big action movie, you can have these situations where characters are just being chased. And the thing that engages us is just this visual, you know, the motorcycle going as fast as it can, the truck is trying to hit it and run it over, and all of those kinds of things, right? I think it's much easier to write that way than it necessarily is to be able to write this way. Here, you need to engage us in so many different ways. Conflict is not a single level conflict. There are multiple layers to this conflict, multiple levels and we're going to discover some of those as we go along. There are going to be emotional dilemmas that you build in where it becomes like in one movie I was watching, there were 3 characters and one character had to make a choice. Which of the other 2 live, right? And she had gotten to know both of them, the other 2 men, she'd gotten to know both of them over the last 25 hours of being inside this place. And she had to make that choice. That was a dilemma, an emotional dilemma she was facing, and it caused all kinds of drama between the 3, you know, and she went through hell in the midst of that, right? But again, you're building in stuff that will engage the audience deeply. Intrigue, layers, and reveals. So this, you know, unless you've already mastered those 3 skills, like if you say, okay, I know what a reveal is. I understand what a layer is, or, you know, I mean, isn't intrigue that there's a mystery or something like that? If you're in any of those kinds of spots, if you haven't mastered these, you need to here. And reveals are one of those things that I see tons and tons of reveals in contest scripts where all that happened was the writer decided, okay, this is the scene I'm going to reveal this in, and then he had one character explain it to another. That's the weakest reveal there is. I really, truly, if you have something like that in one of your scripts, once you learn this stuff, if you have something like that in one of your scripts, I'd recommend going back to that reveal and applying our model to it, because it will change it in such a big way and cause audiences to first be deeply engaged, and second, to have a deep emotional experience the moment the reveal happens. But these others are important. And by the way, here's what intrigue is. The whole purpose of intrigue is it causes the audience to start wondering, thinking, trying to figure out, right? This is all mental. They are trying to figure out what's beneath the surface. And because you make it important to the characters, and because you design it in a way that puts those characters in some kind of danger or the possibility of loss, then there's the emotional side to that, right? But the objective of intrigue is to suck us in and have us constantly wondering about what's going to happen beneath the surface. And that makes a huge difference. And then D, interest techniques throughout. I'm going to say, I think the big job when you're writing a contained movie, once you get, past that first, second draft, is to start thinking, first, how do I build in all of this stuff that's under the surface? And then how do I make every single scene as interesting as it possibly can be. You do not have the luxury of a dull moment when all you have is 3 characters in a single room. You don't have the luxury of a dull moment. You need to have something happening all the time, and you need to have it engage us in multiple different ways. So an interest just means it just keeps re-getting our attention. It has us engaged again and again and again and again. Every scene needs to do it. We had a writer who made a deal with a producer, and he came back afterwards and he said, I used your interest techniques. I put 3 to 5 of them in every single scene. And he said, the producer said over and over and over, I could not stop reading. So that's important. It'll make a difference both in the quality of the movie, but it'll also make a difference in whether you make the deal or not. Now, let's look at the key parts of a contained movie. The basics. Few location, few cast, few crew. I think everybody knows this, right? It's like you look at it and say, what are the locations that really need to be there, right? When we went back to our coal mine idea that we just came up with a little bit ago, and I came up with 3 locations, right? It's like inside the mine that they're trapped in, out in the real world where they are trying to break into the mine and save their people, and then this other tunnel that they find in the midst of it, this other mine shaft. Those are my 3 locations. We've got 5 people down inside the mine. We've got like 10 people up above or something like that, whatever it is. Maybe there's fewer. You get to make those choices, right? And then you get to look at them and say, how do I make them as interesting and compelling as possible? You know, and by the way, this is part of it. It's like a lot of times you're looking at the location and saying, how can I use that? What can I do about that? What could we change about that will create 2 or 3 times the drama? Second, you're looking at the characters and asking yourself, what could we do with these characters to have so much more happen in a situation than them just being trapped in a mine and waiting, right? Now, I know that's what their lives are probably like. In real life, if somebody was trapped in a mine, there's probably very little you could do, but not for your characters. Your characters are going to be very proactive. They're going to make things happen. They are going to create drama. They are going to experience drama. You know, who knows where it's going to go. So, okay. Second thing, easy to pitch to producers and market to audiences. This is one of the basics that the pros do, but I think a lot of other people don't. You know, looking again, when we ran contest, what I noticed was there were just lots and lots of scripts that were submitted that I could not figure out how to pitch. And I have probably pitched, back when we were producing, I probably pitched 60 different scripts during that period of time to major production companies and studios. I have since probably been involved in 20 different projects where I've pitched. So out of all of that, I'm pretty good at pitching. I can figure it out. But looking at most of those projects that were submitted to the last contest that I was a judge in, I would say the vast majority of them were not pitchable. And that's because the writer hadn't figured it out before creating their project. What they did was an idea popped into their head and they just went with it. They just started writing, right? And as they were writing, stuff just came to them and they kept adding it. And then they get to the end and they go, oh, I got to go to the market. How do I pitch it? So, you know, I've had so many people who pitched me something back when we were producing. And at the end of them telling me this whole story, I could not figure out how to pitch it, because I'm not going to go into a studio or a major production company and tell them a whole story. That's not how you pitch in this industry. That's only what you do if you're already a pro, if they're wanting you to do a paid writing assignment. Then you tell them a whole story. But otherwise, what you're really doing is you're presenting something that is designed to sell. Now, I hope this makes sense to you. Part of what you need, then these are the basics, right? If I was creating a contained movie right now, I'd figure out what might these be, right? What might be a project that would work with this? I'd start brainstorming a whole bunch of them that could have few locations, few cast, few crew. And then I would create a pitch. That would be the next thing. Before I went to anything else, before I created a treatment, before I created an outline, before I wrote a script, I would create a pitch, right? And then I'd look at it. Do I have a pitch that's strong, that's compelling, that actually can, if a producer gave me 30 seconds to pitch, could I pitch in a way that they would say yes? And by the way, the answer is yes. I've probably done at least 100 pitches at different times in 30 seconds or less. We have the biggest deal we ever made. The entire pitch lasted 1 minute. And, it worked. And the reason it worked was because as soon as I said the pitch, they saw they could market it to audiences. So that's important. And by the way, if you're not thinking that way yet, it's okay. Then you can learn to think that way. I've had so many people who have said to me, oh, I'm terrible at pitching. And this is kind of a typical thing. I'm really, truly, I'm going to tell you, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of writers have said those exact words. I am terrible at pitching. And if I let them keep talking, they'll tell me how introverted they are and how they're not good in a room and all of those kinds of things. Here's my response to that. So, if they have a great pitch that is short and to the point, and all they have to say is 1 to 3 sentences, they can pitch well, right? It's not about the performance. It's about saying the right thing. And this is where I think most people, their pitch is to tell the whole story, which is the worst possible way you can pitch. So just don't do that. What you want to do is you want to go right to the big hook. And maybe I'll talk about this later. Yeah, I think I will. You want to go right to the big hook that is going to cause the producer to say yes. You say that 1 or 2 sentences right then, and it's the only thing they've heard. They just heard something they could sell. Now, all that happens is the script needs to pay it off, right? And if you're thinking that way, or don't go, well, I really want to tell them my whole story, because again, that's sabotage. The more you tell, the worse it gets. You want them to read your script. That's different. You want them to read your entire script. I am with you on that. But on pitching, short, to the point, and make it high concept, which is where we're going next. And these 2 things right here are what sell. The script backs it up. As long as the script delivers on the pitch, you're in business, right? But back to this. So you need a high concept and a great title. And these 2 go together. So if I say, like here, for instance, if I use the movie The Purge, and I say, and here's my pitch on The Purge, if I was doing it. I have a story that answers the question, what would happen if for a 12-hour period, any person in the United States could commit any crime, including murder? And then I pause and let them take that in. And then I say, and the title is The Purge, right? Which once you know the concept, that title is a great title. If we just called it The Purge, and then what we got into was we found out this is just a movie about people who are trying to clean up things in their life, and it's, you know, it's just a drama and that kind of thing, I think The Purge would be an awful title. But for this particular movie, it was great. So there was a high concept presented succinctly and a great title. Now, if you don't agree on any of those, that's okay. That doesn't make any difference. What you do need to be able to do is to create a high concept and a great title that makes sense for your genre and makes sense for your project. So first, a high concept. It's what's the most unique part that can be said in a single sentence and we see the movie. Now, let me go back to the Purge pitch. There are going to be people who say, I didn't see the movie, right? And that's good. What they're really saying is I don't know what the story is. And that's different. I can tell you two times when I have seen the movie from this. One was The Purge. It was just instant. It was like as soon as I knew that's what the story was about, I didn't just see the movie, I saw the franchise. You know, what would happen if for a 12-hour period, anyone in the United States could commit any crime, including murder? I saw it starting out as a small story where we're going to see the dynamics of this. And then it's going to escalate up to a much bigger thing. And we're on the second year, and now everybody's going out there and doing it. And then it's going to get to an even bigger thing where finally we have military groups who are working together out there killing people all over the place. And that's what it did, right? That's pretty easy to predict, right? So high concept. What you're looking for first is something unique, and this needs to be something big that the whole movie is about, right? So whatever it is that you're brainstorming, whatever story you're brainstorming right now, how do you find some kind of major, unique hook? Because that's the key right there, right? Anytime a movie comes out that is not based on a book or a comic book or a franchise or those kinds of things, almost always it's some form of high concept. If it's not one of those, there's something unique there, something we haven't seen before. And that's the other way you can do this. You just ask yourself that question. What having to do with this genre, having to do with this kind of story, what haven't we seen yet? Right? It's like if you go back to Groundhog Day, I remember first I thought Groundhog Day was an incredibly interesting concept. But since then, people started saying, well, having to do with Groundhog Day, what haven't we seen yet? Right? And somebody created a story called Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt that essentially was Groundhog Day in a war. Somebody created another one called Happy Death Day that essentially was a horror movie where this lady lived her death on her birthday, lived her death over and over and over and over and over again until she found out who was killing her. And it was Groundhog Day in a horror movie, right? So it can be something that connects with people that we've already seen, but there needs to be the unique part that is that strong. The difference between Groundhog Day, up in Puxatawny versus Groundhog Day at war is huge, and Groundhog Day as a horror movie, something we hadn't seen in the horror genre. So a great title points to the high concept. It sells the movie, and it's 1 to 4 words. Now, let's just take a look at this just for a second. This is another place where I have people say all the time to me, I'm terrible at titles. I can't come up with titles. So we spent a lot of time on this. We've designed a method for coming up with titles that makes it so easy. And all you have to do is just to be willing to brainstorm. And that's it. And what you need to be able to do at that point is still be able to think this way. Does that title point to the high concept? Right? Because a lot of times people will have these innocuous titles that have no meaning, and you can't figure out even what it's about. And I've actually turned to writers before and said, can you explain this title? And then they'll talk for 5 minutes to explain it. And at the end, I still don't know why they chose that title. What you need is something that the moment you say the title, people immediately look to the high concept. I was talking with, what was his name? I'll think of it in a second. The actor from, well, here, I'll tell you the movie. Any second, it'll come to me. This is it. 40-year-old virgin. So I'm interviewing, his first name is Steve, at AFI. And so he's a big actor. He sits down, I'm asking him some questions, and I was really trying to just figure out what to say next. I was a little starstruck. And he said, I said to him, so what are you working on now? And he goes, oh, I have a movie that's coming out soon. It's called 40-Year-Old Virgin. Now, I had never heard of that before. And I laughed and the audience laughed, and I thought he was just joking. And then I turned to him and I said, are you serious? And he goes, yes, in kind of a comedic way. Yes, yes, I am serious. We just finished shooting. And I was like, oh, wow. So that was the first moment that I heard of it. As soon as he said, yes, he was serious, I saw the whole movie. Right? 40-Year-Old Virgin, that title in itself essentially was the high concept, right? So it not only pointed to the high concept, it gave you the high concept. I instantly saw the movie. I knew what we're going to have is we're going to have somebody who's 40 years old. They're embarrassed. This has been a secret they've hidden all their life, that they have never had a relationship with a woman yet. We're going to get to a certain point in the script, probably the end of the first act, and a woman's going to come into his life who suddenly challenges this, and they start a relationship together. And by the end of the movie, when we get to the climax of the movie, his life is going to change. And after that, he's no longer going to be a 40-year-old virgin. So I saw all of that. I didn't see that he was going to work in an electronics store, or that he had all of these, dolls that were collectibles, and that she had an eBay, business. I didn't see any of that kind of stuff. So that's not necessary when you're pitching. What's necessary is that what they hear instantly has them see something that's unique, that is easy to sell in a single sentence, right? And that the title points to the high concept. Do that, you're in business. Number 3, character depth. So you're looking at your characters. You need to give them some serious depth. If you only have 3 characters on the screen, and there's a lot of them that are done like that. There's some of them like Alien that I think basically had 7 or 8 characters. So even in that kind of situation, when you have less characters, you need to give them more depth. So one of the ways is intrigue. There is more beneath the surface with this character than on the surface, right? And because if you have that, then we're going to have things to explore. We're going to have surprises. We're going to worry about what's happening. There are emotional issues and dilemmas going on that get us deeply engaged in these characters' experiences. They must face their worst fear. If you choose not to do this, all you're doing is just giving up on a huge opportunity. I'd be looking at these characters and asking, how could you, first, what could their worst fear be that essentially this situation will cause them to have to face it. They will have to deal with whatever that is. And they need a strong character journey. So again, if you have 3 characters in a single room or in a house or in a mine or whatever, they're still going to have a strong character journey. There is going to be a change that happens in their life during this period of time that engages the audience, that has us wonder about them, right? And that we, by the end, we feel like something has happened here, something significant. And you need conflict and having the other characters trigger the main character or trigger each other, right? So this, it's like, again, if you just put 3 people in a room and say, okay, you guys are going to be in this room for the next 5 days. Of course, there's going to be natural conflicts that show up. There are going to be points at which they're going to get sick of each other. There are going to be things like that. So there's the average stuff, the normal stuff, right? You're going to build that in, but you need to create a conflict around them that is something that is designed in, that fits who they are, or you shift who they are to fit the conflict, and is designed to trigger everybody so that they have to deal with it, right? This shouldn't be a thing of, like, if you did this and you had each character go to a corner and they sat there quietly for 5 days, that's not a movie. So now, meaningful structure. First, you need a strong beginning, middle, and an ending. And since you're putting them in a single location, you need to be able to make sense out of that. Somewhere in the beginning, we're going to find out why they're here, what this is about, why they're trapped here, or why they refuse to move any place. There's consequences to whatever that is. So this is about locking them in. By the end of that first act, you are going to have them completely locked in. They can't leave that location for whatever reason. And then we go into the middle and ultimately the ending. Each one of them basically has different parts of the journey happening. You're going to continue having things escalate. So you need strong turning points. Now, let me go back. At one point, I was doing a contest where they had contained movies in there as a category. I would tell you what I saw, probably 70 to 80% of them had weak turning points, or in some cases, no turning points. There were some that I'm pretty positive that the writer didn't think there was a structure to contained movies. They thought it mainly was about, you put the characters in this situation and then let them emote on each other nonstop until the end, until everything's discovered. And it's like, no, you put them in there, and at the end of that first act, you have a strong turning point that locks them in. There's no hope. They can't go anyplace else. They now have to deal with this. Once they get to the midpoint, you need another strong turning point that shifts the meaning of the entire thing. They're still on the same journey, but the meaning is now different. But if that point is strong, if that turning point is strong, that audience is going to be deeper engaged at the midpoint than they were at the first act turning point, right? And then you're going to take them to that second act turning point, and at that point, they're going to get even more engaged, and now they'll go into the climax, right? If every one of those turning points is strong, you just made your story so much better, and you increase the chance that you'll have somebody working with you. Every 30 minutes, and this is the way to think about it, every 30 minutes, the stakes, the conflict, and the tension rise. Every 30 minutes, the situation becomes significantly more difficult for those characters, and they have to face and deal with fears that they may not have known existed before that. And then this needs to deliver on the character journey powerfully. And there are some people who would say, hey, if they're all in the same room together, there's no character journey. So if somebody's saying that, usually they're thinking that character journey means only the physical journey. And there may be a huge character journey that takes place physically. But the other side is there's also the internal character journey, the change that's going to take place in their life. By the end of this story, they're never going to be the same person again. Right? Something has changed for them by the end of this story. And that's your job, is to make sure that happens. Now, by the way, you could also have a physical character journey. Let's say this is, you put 4 men in a cell, and then the power goes out in the prison or the jail or whatever they're in, and everybody leaves, and they're just left there by themselves. They may go through a physical journey that starts with somebody establishing dominance and trying to establish control. And now it's about one of the other characters finally coming up with the courage and fighting that person, and maybe getting beat at the beginning, and maybe at the end they finally find a way to take them out, and because of that they're able to escape. Right? So you build a character journey in. If this is missing, if any of these are missing, take any of these out, and the story feels wrong. It feels like there's some kind of major problem. Right? I hope you get that. And if you take any of the ones from the previous slide out, it's like, well, there's just nothing here that is worth us putting on a screen. So, all of this stuff matters. All of this stuff makes a significant difference, and you want to be a master at it. Now, let me just say something having to do with contained scripts. Even though you are doing more with less, you have a chance to show yourself as an incredible writer. You have a chance to show them that you can do something absolutely amazing that they can't, right? And what this all comes down to is just mastering this particular way of writing. So let me just walk you through the upcoming class where you will master this, where you'll go through every step of what it takes to be able to create an amazing contained movie that has a chance of selling in the near future. So here we go. This is a 30-day class. During the 30-day class, I think you'll get like 14 or 15 lessons. They're every other day. On this, what happens during that period of time is each day you take another step. Each day you do something that moves your project forward. So let's start with the first one. And stay with me, and just so you can see the steps that we're going through, because these are maybe different than the ones you might have normally thought. First thing, we look at the key decisions for a great contained movie. So this is, what are the most important decisions you need to make for this script that you're about to create? You make those in advance so that you go into it already knowing what's going to make this a great script. Second, then it's about the high concept. Your job at this point is to you're going to brainstorm ideas in between now and then. I think the class starts in about, well, I don't know when it starts, but you're going to brainstorm ideas in between now and then. Bring in your best ideas. At this point, you will mold it into a high concept so that you already know that this thing has a chance of selling. And then your job as you write the script is to honor that high concept. So if a producer requests the script because of your pitch, they will immediately read it and go, oh my God, this script is amazing, and it delivers on that pitch in a powerful way. Third, then who are the right characters for this story? And this is so important. When people just put random characters into a story, that doesn't make it work. You need something, even if you're going to make them look like they're random in the beginning, you need something so that each of those characters is specifically designed to trigger the others. Each of those characters is specifically designed to go on this particular journey. They are set up in advance to have to face certain fears that this journey will put in front of their face over and over and over again. There's a whole bunch of things that make them the right character that if you were doing something that wasn't a contained movie, I might look at it and say, oh, no, you need to broaden these characters or change them or whatever. But here, they're the perfect character to do this. Then it's about brainstorming infinite possibilities inside confinement. Now, let me tell you where this came from. I'm talking with an A-list screenwriter about a contained movie that he had written. And I said, does it ever bother you that, there are 500 things you can't do because you only have 3 locations and you only have 7 characters? And he goes, there may be 500 or 1,000 things I can't do, but there are 10,000 I can. And he said, the reason why most people have a hard time with contained movies is because they are only thinking about what they can't do. He said, I'm going to find the most interesting, the most amazing ways to do the things we can do that will make this story amazing. So we came up with a model for how do you create infinite possibilities in a confined situation. And you'll love it. It'll make a huge difference for you. It'll free you up. It'll give you so many possibilities, and then you'll just pick the best ones and end up with a great script. Lesson number 5 is building in more character depth. Now, we talked about character depth today, but I didn't actually give you the how-tos on this. Here, we're going to give you the exact how-tos, and you will look at each of the 3 or 5 or 7 or 10 or how many characters you have. You will look at each one of them and find what's going to give them some serious depth that also interacts with the depth of the other characters. So this is an art. You will love it. Number 6, layers that fascinate audiences. Anytime you have a layer that's revealed, the audience now is going to see something new about this character they didn't know. And that many times can cause us to reevaluate the whole story, right? If all of a sudden we found out, we got 3 people trapped in this room and we just found out that one of them is a killer and nobody knows which one it is. First, that's going to create a lot of tension. Second, then if we find out which one it is, the moment we find out which one it is, now the other 2 are in danger. What are they going to do? Now we're rethinking all the different things that other character did, the killer did, to set them up, to prepare them for whatever he or she is about to do. So, that layer changes things. Number 7, now we're going to create the character journeys. And each of these characters, if you only have 3, each of them have character journeys. If you have more than that, then you'll probably pick 2 or 3 that will have a strong character journey and make sure that they go on that. You might find a way to do an ensemble kind of situation where like 7 of them all have a strong journey that is unique to each of them in their own way. Number 8, now it's about creating structure for confinement. And we have a structure that is perfect for this. It is designed to escalate exactly the way you need to do it in a contained movie. It is designed with the kind of turning points that you need. It will make it easy for you to make sure you have a strong structure that keeps us engaged. Number 9, keeping it low budget. For those of you who want to write a low budget version, this will tell you exactly how to keep it low budget, what you need to do, what you need to avoid, all those kinds of things. Number 10, now writing your outline. So at this point, you've done all of this stuff. You're now going to turn that into an outline so that you make sure that you really deliver on each of these incredibly important parts so that your layers off across the story so that your right characters are triggered and trigger others at the right moments, all of those kinds of things, right? You're going to create this outline that makes it so easy for you to be able to write this script. We've had lots of people come out of this and write the script in 15 to 25 days. And then finally, number 11, and this I'm giving you because you really do need to have something that you have a chance to sell. And selling basically comes down to, again, two things. Lesson number 2, your high concept, and lesson 11, what makes, what is a great title for this? You have those two, you're in business. I asked Sean Cunningham at one point, how much of his success does he think came from having that title, Friday the 13th? And he said, most of it. He had an incredible title, and then the rest he did a good job on. And that title turned it into a franchise, turned it into $1 billion. It makes a huge, huge difference. So we'll give you a title model. How do you create titles? You will become great at it going through this process. It'll influence every script you write from now on. Now, this class actually starts on August 21st. That gives you a month to brainstorm ideas. And what I would be doing is every other day or every third day, I just have a quick brainstorm session and just start being open to it. Ideas will come to you. How do we put them in this situation? How many different ways can we make something contained, right? You just start brainstorming. And along the way, just because you're brainstorming, just because you're thinking about it, you'll start having ideas pop into your mind while you're, while you are working, while you are exercising, when you wake up in the morning, they'll come to you. So brainstorm whatever ideas you can, bring in your favorite one, the one that you think has the best chance. You will take it through this process starting on August 21st. By the end of this, you will have everything you need to have that script be absolutely the best writing you've ever done in your life. And mastering this will improve every script you write from now on. The normal price on it is $250. Let me give you a special. And this is for the first 20 people only. Cheryl told me right before I came in, she goes, okay, I just set the system. The first 20 get this price, then it bumps up $50. So she said, what we'll do on this one is, because it's a month out, and also because I just want you guys to be able to do this, we'll give it to you at half price. So you can get in right this minute at $125. That gives you this 30-day class that we normally sell at $250 for half price. If you liked what you heard here today, I promise you, you will love what this does for your writing and how it takes everything you write from now on to a new level. All you got to do is go down here, click on this link, bit.ly/contained class. bit.ly, bit.ly/contained class. If that link isn't clickable, just write that down, put it in your browser, and click return, right? Put it in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return. It'll pull up the sign up sheet, sign up. As soon as you sign up, you're in. The class will start again on August 21st. But by then you'll have brainstormed 5, 10, 20 different ideas for contained movies. You'll pick the best one and you will go through and make it something incredible. So if you liked what we did here today, I promise you, you will learn 10 times as much during this program or more. And it will shift how you think about your screenplays and what's possible for you. It also will have you then end up with a contained script that when you're talking to producers in the future, or if you're submitting to contests, it'll be something that has a chance of being in demand. So that's what we're hoping for you. We're hoping that every one of you end up being able to make deals in the upcoming situation where once this strike is over, people in this industry are looking for projects that can be easily produced and put on the market as quickly as possible. if you can, it would be great for you to take advantage of that situation. So thank you for being with me today. I hope this made a big difference for you. And I look forward to working with you at some point in the future. This is Hal Crosman with Screenwriting U, and I'm wishing you the absolute best in your writing. Bye-bye, everyone.